pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Mr. Glassbach?
Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand? Here. Mrs. Hoskins?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Mather?
Here.
Mrs. Schott?
Here.
Joe Vento?
Here.
And Ann Eschels.
And if you could call the calendar, please.
Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020 will be a CLAC meeting. Tuesday, March 10th, 2020 is a school committee business meeting. Friday, March 20th is the town budget workshop. And Tuesday, March 24th is a school committee business meeting.
Thank you. And no presentations, but any recognitions this evening?
Yes. I have 3 recognitions. The first one is Mrs. Strain. I don't know if everybody knows her here. She's the curriculum coordinator at the high school for the art program. She forwarded some great information. The congratulations goes out to Maya Schaefer at North Kingstown High School for her honorable mention in the Wickford Art Association 2020 Scholarship Program, the competition exhibit and award. And they are going to be recognized, all the different people that were awarded are going to be recognized on February 28th. And they basically said, Maya, your body of work is both compelling and reflective of your generation and the fine guidance you have received from your Rhode Island art educator. They congratulate you on your courage to put your work out for exhibition, but also for a curating process such as this. They wished her all the very best for future endeavors and emerging artists in our community, and they look forward to meeting her on the 28th. So congratulations goes out to Maya. The next thing is the Rhode Island PBS. So back in November, Mr. Doran and Mr. Frantz took a team of students, Theo Simmons, Grant Baer, Mateo Garcia, Nicole San Marco, and also Liam Robenheyer and Jillian O'Farrell. And it was their program, the Rhode Island High School Quiz Show. And they competed along with other high schools in Rhode Island. And the first up was North Kingstown High School versus East Greenwich High School. And I'm happy to relay that North Kingstown High School did win, and they moved on to the semifinals. And they're going to be against Barrington on March 8th. So stay tuned, March 8th, 2020, to see who wins North Kingstown High School versus Barrington. So congratulations to those students. And then finally, so on January 30th, Cindy Bowe, who's from our Office of Family Learning, it's going to be item F today on the agenda, just so you know. She received a National Grid community grant for $8,000 for the summer 2020 STEM program. And again, Cindy's in her office is always finding ways to stretch their resources, and we're very glad that this is on here. So congratulations goes out to her, so I'm hoping that all works out well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item would be citizens' comments. We ask if you could please respectfully limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. And also we ask if you please state your name and address for the record. Anyone signed up?
No.
Okay. No one signed up, but that doesn't mean you can't speak. If anyone would like to speak this evening.
Thanks.
Okay. Hearing none, we will move on. Next, we have our routine items. I'd ask for a motion to seal the executive session minutes of February 18th, 2020. A motion from Ms. Hoskins and a second from Ms. Hildebrand. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously, and I can disclose that no votes were taken in this evening's executive session. Next, moving on to our consent agenda. Any items that anyone would like to exempt from the consent agenda? Hearing none, if I could have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
A motion from Ms. Hoskins
Second.
and a second from Mr. Mather. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, we have school committee approval of $25,000 for the North Kingstown High School for a refresh of the library. Dr. J, if you could speak to
Sure.
that.
So we're a few things are going on right now involving the library. It is an item that we are looking to do a major refurbishment over the next year or so, to really turn it into more of a modern facility reflecting the needs of the high school. We have done some polling of students and faculty. We want to get as many people involved in this as we can. This first phase, however, is to begin a program where we're looking to honor distinguished alumni of North Kingstown High School. Right now, if you walk through the halls, there is a lot of honor being paid to athletes of North Kingstown High School, and we have a proud history in that area, and it's a great thing to do. But if you're not an athlete, there really isn't a designated area to honor major accomplishments in life. And one of the things that spurred this on is the death of Lieutenant General Thomas Vandal. Thomas Vandal is a graduate of North Kingstown High School from the 1970s, and he has moved to the highest echelon of the United States Army. In fact, he was the commander of the 8th Army. That's the forces that are situated in Korea. And he recently passed away this year, and his family asked through Senator Reed's office to do some kind of a memorial at North Kingstown High School on his behalf. And we're happy to do that, and it looks like we're going to be settling on a date on Memorial Day to do that. And I'll have a lot more information for you going forward on that. But I see that as a really good occasion to begin this Distinguished Alumni Program. And to get that going, I'm asking for $25,000 to do some upgrades to the library, to have an area where plaques and other artifacts in Lieutenant General Vandal's honor are displayed. And then going forward, every year we'd have 1 or 2 new inductees into the Distinguished Alumni Program. There'd be a procedure for nominating people and that sort of thing. And that space would be reserved for new inductees. And after their time in that space is come, because there's a new inductee, we would have like some kind of a really nice plaque that's set in the space of the library. So eventually we'd have a library full of plaques that are honoring distinguished alumni of North Kingstown High School. That's the idea. So this first piece is to give us $25,000, no more, to do some work on lighting and some furniture, display area type of thing, to really set this up so that it is ready to go when we do this ceremony for Lieutenant General Vandal on Memorial Day.
And so it would do not just this signage, but also just that sort of the area you were looking at.
Yeah.
Not the students know the library, but not everybody does.
So for those of you who know the library, if you walk in, there's a shelving unit to your right-hand side, and then there's kind of a corner, and there's a bank of computers along the wall. That would be the area that we would begin with. And we would set that up with different lighting and some paneling and kind of make a nice display case out of it so that it becomes a distinguished area for distinguished alumni. To be, pictures and any other artifacts that might be located, the plaque in particular. And then, we would have multiple plaques around the library eventually, but the newest inductees would have that area for, a prominent display for what could be like a 6-month period or something along those lines.
And also a refresh of that sort of general seating area.
Yes, it could involve some new furniture in that area, a display case, even lighting would probably be involved, a little bit different for that area. So this is just to kind of get us started. Eventually, like I said, what we would like to do is refurbish the entire library with the idea that the library we built 20 years ago may not be the library that people feel like they need today and going forward. There's much more of a demand for kind of open meeting space, flexible type of space where it could be used for tables of 4, but then modified for kind of an assembly where 2 or 3 classes are coming together and listening to a guest speaker. More of a high-tech feature in terms of video display, that sort of thing, to make it more like a lecture space, could be used for faculty meetings. But also, quickly set up so that you do have desks available for students who need to do some work or conference with other students or teachers, that sort of thing. So, we're looking for ideas. We already have a lot of them, but we're looking for more ideas, and we're looking for, that project to really come together in the next few months, and then I would be coming forward to the school committee over the summer and the fall with more of a request in terms of a long-term vision for that library. And I think that could kind of spearhead an effort to start modifying all of our libraries in the district, but I think it's wise to start with the high school.
So I'd ask for a motion to approve item E1. A motion from Ms. Hoskins. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any further discussion, questions?
You said there are computers where you are.
Yes.
So the computers are getting moved someplace else?
That I don't know.
They will go to waste, I can tell you that.
But they might not stay in the library?
I'm not sure about that.
You know, I did a review of library space with Mr. Waterman, Dr. Morse, and even those kind of stationary computers, we're not sure how much they are needed. We feel we would need some, but not as much as we currently have in the library right now, particularly with all the students at Chromebooks.
Right.
So they just don't get the usage they used to get. I think there would still be some desktop computers in the library, but I just don't see the need along that wall. We'll definitely find another place.
Those are primarily teacher computers anyway.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah. So with all teachers and all students having their own laptop now.
Yeah, and they predate the one-to-one. This has
Yes,
been-
absolutely. It's been a while.
They're from before the
So-
Chromebooks
Yeah.
came in.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Mr. Jones?
Yes, no, I just wanted to say, I always support this. I think, I remind the committee that we put some seed money towards
Yeah.
that project when we did the capital funding, and I think, you know, in addition to upgrading our athletic complex, upgrading our libraries across the board is something we should be putting emphasis on. They need to be just not only upgraded, because they need to be upgraded, they need to be repurposed and reimagined for how we expect teaching and learning to be done, you know, in the changing environment that we have. So, and I would remind that we actually put as part of our capital request to the town a chunk of money to keep adding to that pot. So I hope that all goes in. I don't think we need to add this, but I had discussion about asking our student rep if they wouldn't mind taking on, you know, from a student perspective, being part of this project and maybe coming back to us after working with the administration on how we can get student feedback and input into the larger project going on.
Sure.
Because, you know, we, it's not even called the library, we're calling it the library,
Right.
it's the media center, because that is the newer name for it is recognizing that, you know, a library in the traditional sense, isn't, in a school isn't what it once was. And, you know, everybody, the classic example of, you know, this is the new high school. The new high school's not new, and the high school went online at a time when not every student had a Chromebook. And when, even back then, you kind of did often start your project with, you know, the encyclopedia, you know, and all in the row. The world doesn't work like that anymore. And so libraries need to evolve with the times, and it's a good time to, you know, this is a very, very baby step towards, you know, a big refresh overall, but a good first step in that direction.
Well, I also think, you know, essentially when you go on to college and other places, just abilities for groups to collaborate and how you do, you know, group dynamics, group projects, innovative thinking spaces and stuff. I mean, I know we've been doing some maker spaces at the elementary school, but, you know, I think, again, more spaces where students can collaborate would be a good thing.
You work at a university.
I do. So
I
a little-
I don't know the last time you folks walked through a university library. They do not look like what they
Right.
looked like when we went through the university libraries. And it really recognizes that whole idea of, you know, more collaborative thinking, and I think we can move that way too. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Any other discussion? And all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, if I could ask for a motion to approve item F, the donation for the Office of Family Learning.
So moved.
A motion from Ms. Hoskins.
Second.
Second from Mr. Jones. Dr. Mansouri, you'd mentioned very briefly what it was, just quickly, just a
Yeah,
quick explanation
absolutely.
again.
I actually gave it on TV, but
Oh, sorry.
it's okay. It's their summer programs, and they've been pared back. Their balance, and their budget's been pared back over and over. So they're trying to find creative ways in order to run their summer program, and specifically STEM. And so the National Grid has a community scholarship program, and Cindy Bowe applied to it, and they just heard back on January 30th that they were awarded $8,000. And believe it or not, the $8,000 goes a long way when it's a summer program and it's for STEM students. So they're very happy with the
Great,
award.
well, then thank you for the
Yeah.
work in applying, and also thank you to National Grid.
Absolutely.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Anything on the 2019-20 school budget? We have nothing on the 2021 budget.
Nothing.
Nothing. All right. So tonight is the night we need to approve our bottom line figures for the 2020-21 school budget. Dr. J, if I could turn it over to you to do a brief presentation
Sure.
on your proposed budget.
So, this budget is, an increase of a little over $2 million. $2,044,808 is my proposal. And that is approximately 3.8% of an increase in town funding to the district. Because town funding isn't the entirety of our funding, our request in our overall budget, that would mean our increased revenue would be about $2,378,773 for an increase overall of 3.46. So the town piece is the important piece tonight because this is a request that you will be sending on to the town council, as you know. So this budget, even though looking to add $2 million to the budget from last year, really does not add anything at all that we're not already doing. It keeps pace with what we're currently doing. There's no additional staff in this budget. I'm a little bit worried about that. There's no contingency for increased enrollment. Normally, in some years, I would ask for an additional teacher, say at the elementary level. I know in a number of spots there are places where I would like to fill in with an additional TA, and that is not in this budget. We had talked as a school committee about increasing social emotional learning programming at the high school in particular. That is an item that we were projecting to be in the neighborhood of $200,000 to $250,000. That is not in this budget. We are also interested in increasing our LEAPS program. That's a special needs program that currently resides at Forest Park, but we don't have a middle level program for that, and we feel this is now the time to do that. That would require at least another teacher and TA for that. That is not in this budget. We had talked about some of have brought to us, the importance of doing something with start times. There's nothing here for additional busing. There's nothing here for any kind of additional transportation that would help us to get even Davisville Academy on a single start time instead of like an elementary and a high school start time. So there are a number of things I would like to address. 3.8% brings us right near the cap that we can even request of the town, given the current laws of a 4% increase being the height that we go. So I'm really concerned about this budget. I realize that we live in a world where people would like to feel like maybe we don't need an increase, or maybe we can keep that lumber really low, like 1 or 2%. The reality that we've been dealing with in the years that I've been superintendent, and I know for many years before that, is that those kinds of numbers really set you backwards. You end up cutting a great deal when you're talking about low numbers like that. We look at healthcare costs and salary costs, even though salaries, for instance, if your average employee at a top step with the teachers union or ESP union is a 2% increase. There are a lot of people who are getting increases on steps, and those steps can be significantly more than 2%. So you're looking overall at salaries, you know, moving on a year-to-year pace of 4 to 5%. You're looking at healthcare costs that can be 5% and higher. And those are two major drivers of our budget. So to keep pace with those, really 4% is the neighborhood you need to be in, and probably more than that on a regular basis to continue to do what you want to do and to make any additions that need to be made. And we haven't even started to talk about that conversation that we always have about capital. And that's a different line than the operational budget. But there again, if we know we can bank on, you know, numbers for capital, it really helps in our planning. It really helps in long-term maintenance of our facilities, for instance, and you know, and helps us. And you're not always worried about, well, we would like to do these things, but we're going to have to wait till, you know, a certain date this year, then another date next year to just realize what we even have available to do. You know, so how can you plan a major project to, say, fix a roof when you don't even know if you're going to have the money to do it this year or the following year? So that's what I'm concerned about. I'm trying to be as, you know, as tight about this as I can, because I know that, you know, we're talking about taxpayer money here, and people don't like to see their taxes going up at a high pace. I get it. But these are, you know, the kinds of numbers that I feel we need to continue, and I understand that, you know, there may be some desire to cut back a little bit in certain areas and to make this number lower than $2 million or 3.8%, but I would caution in doing so. This conversation is not done tonight. It's going to go to the town council. There'll be a lot of discussion with them. And I'm really worried that I'm going to need every dollar I can get to do what we're doing this year, but also to try to address some of these other concerns as well. And anything that we cut tonight, I don't see us getting it back, and that's a concern for me. Mrs. King.
I have a couple of things to add. So when you're thinking of cuts, every percent on our budget is approximately $540,000. So if you were looking at 3.8% down to 2%, you're looking at $1 million. So that's one part. The other part that I feel like we always overlook that's really, really a big amount of money to this district are the career tech tuitions from outside districts. And that's $3.6 million. So my perspective is, if we didn't have that money, we'd be $3.6 million short. You know, and that's a huge amount of money that I had really hoped when we first started implementing that we were going to be able to throw some of that to our fund balance so we could do some capital and we could save some money to refresh those programs. I mean, we were very lucky to get a lot of grant money on the Finance Academy from RIDE, that, you know, a lot of work by Dr. Mansieri and when she was at the high school with the staff. We don't have that fund. So I just feel as though that very large amount of money that's coming into the town of North Kingstown is overlooked as the very big funding stream that it is. And that's a funding stream that the school department, through its leadership at the high school and the hard work of the staff at the high school, have brought into this town. And I feel as though that needs a lot of recognition. And then the last thing, Mrs. Healy mentioned the town budget meeting is definitely March 20th. That was always the date. The town clerk confirmed with me today that it's at 10 a.m. So the town council is having an all-day budget workshop on Friday, March 20th, and we are due at 10 a.m. to sit in front of them. I don't expect the meeting to be much more than an hour because they have a lot of departments they have to get to, and that meeting will be at 100 Fairway Drive in the municipal courtroom.
That's not a school committee meeting, though. That's,
It is
I just
not.
want to make that clear to
It is
the
not.
members. So, yeah.
But
It's
it
not
is
a joint meeting.
something that you would like us to attend?
Yeah,
If anybody, you certainly are welcome if anybody wants to attend. We've had varying years. The meetings have been at night sometimes too, but it looks like they're going back to the day format. We know that you guys are at work, but I want to make sure that you all know that that's at 10 a.m. on
And we
that
couldn't
day.
have a quorum at the table or anything because it's not a meeting. What we've done in the past is it's usually Dr. J and Mrs. King, and I've gone and sat with them and talked to the council members, but because it's not a school committee meeting, we couldn't have, everybody there.
But you can be in the
But you certainly
audience.
can be there if you want, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
So I make sure you guys knew that. Okay, so the important thing this evening is we need to approve bottom line numbers for everything. So what I'd suggest is if we sort of start with the easy things. We have to approve a couple items, the general fund budget, the grant funding budget, and then the enterprise funds. We do those separately. So I'll sort of kick things off. If everyone is okay with that, we'll do the grant funding and the enterprise funds first. There's probably not quite as much to talk about on those. So we'll make a motion to approve the superintendent's proposed grant funding budget of $2,033,600. And Mrs. King, if I say any numbers wrong, please let me know. And I would need a second.
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Hoskins. Any discussion on that?
My
Mr.
only discussion is, I think, just can you correct me if I'm wrong, over the past, I want to say 5-6 years, that number's probably gone down by about 30 to 40%, which I think just reflects, in general, both changing support from at the federal level for certain types of education. I think there's just a lot in Title I and Title II kind of support. And some might argue the need hasn't gone away in Title I and Title II support. So just the grant numbers going down, but that not necessarily mean that the need has gone down.
And grants come and go. We've tried very hard over the last several years not to use grant funding except for CRP, the Title I and Title II for staffing. Because, we implement programs with grants and they're great programs, but they go away. And, most of the time the staff doesn't go away. So we've tried to be very cognizant of the fact that if we're going to start a new program and we get some seed money from a grant, that we can continue that going forward. But you'll see some of those line items, they go up and down, in and out. You'll see the Hasbro grant line is lower coming up. There's reasons for that. So there are a lot of reasons why those numbers go all over the place. But the Title I and Title II is probably, the CRP is probably the place where you see the most, not hurtful, but the most impactful change that you see when those numbers go down.
Any other discussion? I'll ask, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, and we do these individually and then all together, right? So I'm going to do sort of a big motion here for the enterprise funds. So I'm going to make a motion to approve the superintendent's proposed budget enterprise fund numbers. The enterprise is made up of food service in the amount of $975,500, computer repair and maintenance fund, which is the sort of self-insured Chromebooks, $25,000, gate receipts, $45,000, and the sports camps at $60,000, for a total enterprise fund of $1,105,500. If I could have a second.
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Hoskins. Any discussion? And Ms. King, just briefly could you just quickly explain what an enterprise fund is, just for the
Yes,
the public?
an enterprise fund needs to be a self-sustaining fund. I think the one that we're most aware of, and they're all important funds, but the food service fund and what's happened with that fund over the last several years. I will tell you that Trish Cawley and I are keeping an eye on that fund because we always said many years ago when the changes were made to bring that back in line with being a self-sufficient fund, that we weren't going to be able to continue to sustain that, because you're only going to be able to charge so much for your food service, and then your other costs go up even as hard as they try to control costs. So we're keeping a close eye on that. We're getting closer and closer to, I'm sorry to say, possibly a small deficit in that program, and that would have to be funded by the district. Certainly nowhere near the days that used to be even before I was here. You were looking at a couple $100,000. But Mrs. Cawley's doing a great job, holding that down. But I do, in full transparency, want you to know that we're getting closer to that time frame where I think we might be realizing a small deficit in that fund. We're looking very closely at it for this year. I do mean very small, but still It won't, probably will not revert back the other way, and we're gonna have to make a decision. There's, I mean, it is what it is. You know, most funds, most food service funds do run a deficit. It's not where you're trying to make tons of money. It's not that kind of program. So, and then the other programs, gate receipts. We all know what that is from our athletics programs and the sports camp. We know Aaron Thomas runs a great camp over the summer, but they understand that those have to be self-sustaining. So there's no deficit that could be allowed to run in that program. We would not fund that. They're very well aware of that.
And so these funds are, while we approve the budgets for them, they're not negative numbers in the way that other expenses are, because they're all self-sustaining projects.
Yeah.
So when you say run a deficit in the food services, then we would make a decision whether the budget would support
We have
it
to.
or we would
We
raise
have to.
prices.
Yeah. And the way it works is that although there is a fund balance, you know, Mrs. Cawley has been able to have a fund balance, you're not allowed to use the fund balance to support a deficit. So that would have to come out of the general operating budget. And again, it's very small we're looking at. I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but we're getting closer every year to it. It just is gonna happen.
And what I think people don't realize too is by law, you can't run a big deficit or a big surplus
Right.
in the fund. If you do, you have to lower the prices.
Right.
So
Right.
you're
It's a
somewhat
a
constrained
balance,
by,
yeah.
I mean, you can't even say like, oh, just charge more. And I also like to add that I think relative to a lot of other districts and what you hear in the state is our uncollected revenues
Very
are
low.
very low.
Very
So
low.
that's not a cause of, getting tighter in that fund.
It seems to me like from what I've heard from some of the other districts, just especially recently, East Providence, is staying on top of people just so they'll know. Not that anybody is not trying to pay, but you know, life comes at you fast. And it seemed like in East Providence, a lot of the issues were people were saying they didn't know. They didn't know that they owed the money. So Mrs. Cawley and her staff are very good on reminding people, gentle reminders, even if it's small amounts of money, because small amounts of money can add up pretty quickly. So I think that's been her success.
So we have a motion and a second on the enterprise funds. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, next we have the actual general funds. So for discussion purposes and to get things going, I'm going to make a motion to approve the superintendent's proposed budget, which was $71,040,551, with a town appropriation out of that of $55,855,551. There's a motion.
Second.
And a second from Mr. Jones. Any discussion? Now would be the time to questions.
71,090,000, right?
I said
551.
40. I'm
Oh.
right, 71,040,551, Mrs. King? You can check my numbers. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Oh, did I say it wrong?
no, I'm sorry. You are correct. You are correct, Mr. Mather. I gave you the wrong number. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I
Good
apologize.
catch, Mr. Mather.
I will withdraw my second.
Unanimous
I'm
consent,
sorry, I
we
was
will
looking
withdraw
at
the
it.
motion
I was
and
looking at
start
a
over.
different number when we did it. You're correct, 71,090,551. The difference, if you're looking at your documentation, is because we have to show the interfund transfers on a different line. So that's the number that
Sorry about that.
Yep,
How about the town number I said is that?
town number is correct.
Okay, so, all right, so let me try that again. Good catch. Okay, so I'm going to redo that. Make a motion to approve the general fund at $71,090,551 with a town appropriation of $55,855,551, correct?
Correct.
I need a second, Mr. Jones.
Yes, I'll second.
Seconded, Mr. Jones?
Right, yeah.
Okay, now, starting over, any discussion, questions? I mean, from here, I'll make a point, an important point, which is that it is so early in our, process that these numbers are our best guess right now. There are so many parts of this equation that we do not know the numbers on, not the least of which the charter school enrollments. They have a huge impact on our budget. They may even have a bigger impact on our budget this year than in other years. And Mr. Jones, you can expound on that if you'd like, because you're our resident charter school expert. But what will ultimately happen is the town will, we'll go into our budget discussions with the town, discuss it more. We may have some slightly better numbers by then. And ultimately, the town will give us the actual number, which we then need to adjust ours to. So this is the first step in the process. It is not by any means the final school budget or the end of the discussion. So any other questions, changes, additions, or anything else?
Yeah, well, I've said it for 5 or 6 years now, without much success to the Charter Review Commission. It's almost impossible to set an accurate number, at least prior to 1 March. So there's some things I have questions on, some things I'd like maybe to have a discussion about changing some priorities the superintendent has, but until we have some better numbers on things that can really drive it, I think that would be an exercise in futility at this point. So I think passing this number doesn't necessarily mean, total agreement, but I think it reflects, for where we're at. I really wish, again, the Charter Commission would accept reality when it comes to budgeting instead of archaic language from 30 years ago. But that's for other groups to decide. So at this point, I will support the number, but I think there's a lot more discussion to be had in terms of both the number and certain priorities. Again, part of it because we don't know what we don't know. Health insurance, the charter school lotteries are 1 March. It's an expansion year for our 2 local charters, that the state has agreed to. So we know that could be a lot more numbers. How much, we don't know. So again, I think part of this is a little bit of futility at this point. But I appreciate the work that the administration has to do because, they have to come up with a number for us and they have to, not just a number, a few thousand lines of UCOA numbers. So I appreciate the work they've done to this point doing that. Again, as we get better data, I hope we can have a more robust discussion on priorities and going forward.
I just want to reiterate a point Mrs. King made. Could you tell me again what the career tech tuition number was that you had?
We're projecting about 3.7 for this year and budgeting 3.6 for next year. It's
So
huge.
$3.6 million. So the point I want to make is, the school department, by definition, it has a job, and it's to educate the students in the town of North Kingstown, and that has an expense. And the primary way that the funds are raised to educate the students in North Kingstown is with the town appropriation, that $55,855,000 and change number that we talked about a minute ago, which relates directly to the tax bills of the people in town, and we're very cognizant of that. The ability to offset that income with any other kind of income is pretty limited. The school department's a school department. They don't run a store. They don't, have a business on the side that makes money. So if you're going to try to offset that, you can look for grant funds. You can go around and asking for money from outside sources, which we have. These are federal grants too, but $2 million and change of that. But our administrators and the staff at the high school, as Mrs. King mentioned, have been able to come up with another idea and another way of bringing in revenue, which is by running our career tech programs. And they, first of all, provide an extraordinary opportunity for the students in our town to go through these specialized programs, earn potential college credits, skills that'll move them in a career. And even if it turns out that you're in the engineering and robotics and you find out in high school that I hate engineering and robotics, that's a lot better to figure out than after paying for 4 years of engineering school and figuring out that you hate engineering and not-for-profits. So even that, if you go through it and decide that's not what I want to do, that's a win. And it also has raised $3.6 million that we do not have to ask taxpayers in North Kingstown for in this budget, and that is a huge component. The caution is, we've got to watch out going forward, because there are, potentials for changes in legislation that could drastically reduce that number going forward if some of the proposals that have been unsuccessful in the past were to ever be successful going forward. And that revenue source would need to be either, we don't have a real way to replace it, which could be potentially devastating, so we need to watch out for that. But I want to commend the administration for, bringing in such successful programs that we're able to run these programs the way we do, provide these opportunities, but also offset, expense to the taxpayers in North Kingstown because the programs are there. Any other discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second on the table. I'll ask for a vote on the motion and the second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay. Next, we will come back to that number later on in a couple months. CIP bond, future bond, existing bond? Yep, Mr. Jones?
With the track, on track with the track.
Yes. Mr. Fossa and I have had some meetings with our consultants, and they've had a meeting with Di Gregorio. They have a sub that's doing it, and we're looking at July right now. We're first in line of the in-line people. We might not be first, but we're right up there. So we don't expect any issues with that, barring, torrential rains for the whole month of July. That's going to be a problem.
Don't say that, because
I know.
So they'll start the work in July?
Yes, it'll be start and finish in July. So there's a few weeks that it needs to be blocked off.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And they have a couple of miscellaneous other things to do, but we are on track for that. We're on track for the track.
Good. Well, also in, I don't know how big, since it's our first cycle, but summer users for the field basically won't be able to use it,
They'll be able to use the field, but not the track.
even while they're doing the track.
No.
That's my question. That's my
Is
Well,
it a
when it's
big
blocked
jump?
off, when it's blocked off, well, they can walk around. Well,
That's just my, you don't have to answer.
Is
they
Just
there
can
my
go
a
in the
point
back.
when
They
they
can
can't?
come in the back way, but I don't think we're
Just
planning
my
on.
point is that they're external users, we
Yeah,
just need to
yeah.
be,
big trample.
Yeah, they could probably come in the back way, but I'm doubting that there's any real summer use anyway, though. The only real summer use would be our,
sports
yeah,
camp.
the camps, and that doesn't start till August.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
that was my next
Yeah.
question. Okay.
yeah, they're August, aren't they? Yeah. We've done a lot of moving around of building use there. If anybody thinks our buildings are dead and cold in the summertime, they are so wrong, because I have spent so much time on moving people around, and, rec uses our building, and there's this summer programming and that summer. There's a lot of use of our buildings over the summer, so that's just the buildings. I'm sure that our track and field will get a lot when it's done too, so.
Next we have policy JIC, the second read. Second, ask for a motion to approve item D1.
So moved.
Motion from Mr.
Second.
Jones, second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? That's our second read, so this will be it. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And then reports, we have our fiscal year 20 reports, which includes the check registers and the cash reconciliations. We had some questions about how we're doing our cash reconciliation when the audit committee was here, so just it's in your report. You can take a look at that, and it's available to members of the public as well as anyone who has any questions about that. If there are no questions, then we've reached the end of the agenda. I ask for a motion to adjourn. Have a motion?
Second.
A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everybody.